Hey, everybody. We're getting ready. Here we go. Ready to push the button anyway. Welcome to the show. Here we go.
Have you ever heard of some fellas who first came over to this country? You know what they found? They found a howling wilderness with summers too hot and winters freezing. Did they have insurance for their old age, for their crops, for their homes? They did not. They looked at the land and the forests and the rivers. They looked at their wives, their kids, and their houses. And then they looked up at the sky and they said, "Thanks, God. We'll take it from here." They were rugged fellas. They were men.
You know how much I love that clip? I really do. I love that John Wayne clip. They were men. I love that. It's awesome. They were men. And just, reflecting off of July 4th, I say this a lot on the show, but again, people say, well, I'm standing on the shoulders of the women before me in media. That's not true, actually. We're all standing on the shoulders of the men who sacrificed everything that they owned to be able to finance the war, the revolution. So those were men that started that ball rolling. So that wasn't women. I mean, the men actually, when they created all men equal, it's so fascinating to me because they didn't say all white men equal. They could have said a lot of things when they devised the documents, but they didn't. They just said all man, meaning all mankind. And I think that's really important distinction because I think that kind of gets lost a little bit. I think that I am in total gratitude of the men who sacrificed everything, even their lives, to be able to form a constitution that did not include royalty as the master, okay, and that we were supposed to be. So that's important. So I just wanted to kind of just say that just because we're in July still and I was off the air. And so I wanted to make sure that to get that said, because I'm standing on the shoulders of men who made that possible. And I really do think that needs the recognition that it deserves. The women could do what they could do before me because of those men. It still goes back to those men relying on God. So I love that. I want to know something else too. I was thinking about this because I was kind of diving into the 1800s lately. And I was thinking, why did they call it the Civil War? I mean, we call it the Civil War, kind of like the World War I wasn't called World War I in the beginning. It was called the Great War because they wanted it to be over. They wanted war to be done with. And they were sold a box of rocks on that, right? Because then we had World War II and continuous wars since, with the adoption of the United Nations, which only served up a cabal to give us more control and more war. And wars are fought for money. Wars are fought for profit. Wars are not fought for slavery. They're never fought for human rights. Wars are never fought for human rights. They're under the guise of human rights, but they're never fought for human rights. They're always fought for money, trade, and profit, right? And control. Okay. So it's just good to know. And so when the Civil War was happening, they actually called it the rebellion. And they didn't like the fact that Americans, after the revolution, were rebelling because they wanted the states to be distinct and different. They did not want the federal control. Well, we are the United States of America, yes, but states' rights were very important. The profiteering that was going on in the South. Of course, we don't want human slavery, but that was being worked on way before the Civil War. That was being worked on the day the ink dried, and even before that, when the Constitution went into effect. So the Civil War, they named it the Civil War like 30 years later. They didn't name the Civil War at the time. So when you see these shows that are talking about the Civil War, when the Civil War was happening, like that's not truth because it wasn't called that. It was called a rebellion. But you can't have, the War of Northern Aggression. Thank you for that comment. There was a couple of names. A lot of people referred to it as a rebellion, but they didn't like that because they didn't want Americans to think they could rebel. So they wanted to come up with a very docile term to explain the Civil War, right? So the Civil War, or the war, So they named it Civil War. So it doesn't sound so rebellious. And so like Americans stood up to the feds. They stood up to the feds and said, well, wait a minute, our southern states, blah, blah, blah. This is how they run. This is trade. This is the profit. And so hence the rebel flag. Yes, I'll be thank you. Yes, hence the rebel flag. So very interesting when we talk about history, when we're in history, and then what comes out of history and what we think the terms that were used. But they did use Civil War because they wanted us to think it was more docile than it was. And they don't want to implant the idea that Americans within their own country are going to fight for their own country. Right? So a lot of states' rights issues in the Civil War, the rebellion, War of Rebellion. So I just wanted to make that comment because I study history a lot, and it's kind of interesting to go back and realize how many things we talk about now have been changed through history, and as we refer to them with our 2026 lens, that it's not accurate. So there's that. All right, you know what? I will take a caller. Why not? Hi, caller. Welcome to the show. Go right ahead.
Yes, that's a complete lie. They call it a civil war.
Yeah.
Civil implies it's a rebellion within a country.
Mm-hmm.
It was a war of aggression on an entirely different country.
Mm-hmm.
The state established a new country, the Confederacy of the United States. And so you need to look at it's very similar to what our government, federal government, the White House is doing over there in Iran.
Yeah.
It's a war of aggression.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire media, the last point I'll make on this, the entire media keeps talking about it as though it's two groups that just decide to go to war. No, in wars, you always identify who's the aggressor and who's responding, and they responding appropriately to protect the rights of the people.
Okay, thank you. I really love the phone call. Thank you. I really appreciate that. All right. So the call-in number is below on the screen. And I just want to make sure you realize that you can call in. It's 435-680-2503. I've been doing this 16 years, long time. And boy, do I have treasure troves of info. And I want to get to kind of a big rabbit hole that I'm going to introduce today, but I don't know how far I'm going to be able to go on it. Dr. Lee Merritt was supposed to join me today. She had to reschedule to Tuesday, so she's going to come on Tuesday. So the header of the show will say Kate and Dr. Lee Merritt, but she has to come on Tuesday. So, and that happened right before I started the show. So I just wanted to let you know that. So if you were expecting Lee. So I know that there's been a lot of talk about Fauci. Fake G. And I wanted to, I love Babylon Bee because who wouldn't? Whoops. I don't know why that is showing. I don't know why that is showing. Okay. So when we get to let's say Fauci, let me add this to the stage right here. I'm on YouTube for all of you. So, and Rumble and such. So you can see what I'm talking about. But here was another meme, and it was Democrats accuse Fauci diary of attacking science. Okay. And again, I just wanted to restate again that that this is truly, he's a bad guy. Yeah. He's also the fall guy. So that you think that whatever happens to him is going to be the total sum of what happens. They want all of your direction on this clown. And he's evil. But at the same time, he is supposed to be the fall guy. They always have to pimp out the fall guy so that everyone's attention's on one person getting yelled at, okay, by the Senate. And then what they're going to do is never arrest him. They're never going to do anything to him. So it's just never going to happen because they protect their own. They protect Hillary. They protect all of these people. I mean, remember Trey Gowdy and Benghazi? Do you remember how Trey Gowdy just went after, and everyone thought, oh, good, some justice. It wasn't going to happen. It never did happen. Nothing happened. It's all show. It's all theater, folks. This is all theater. Then, like, look at it like you're reading a script, and now you yell at him really hard, and now you pretend that you bring out something that everybody wants to hear, and then he says, "I plead the fifth," and I loved the Babylon Bee that said he pleads, the fifth to science because it's like, oh, science, oh, can't talk, and so I just after calling this out from day one and being accurate. I'm not patting myself on the back. It's just that it was pretty easy to see how they locked down a country and already had the shots waiting in the wings for a mystery they hadn't even named yet. And that Fauci was on those patents uh, for the shots, for the medicine in the hospital that was actually remdesivir that was actually hurting people. So everything was ready. And in a shortage, they didn't have any shortages of signage. They didn't have any shortages for everything they needed for Blovid, but they had shortages for everything else, right? Your health department went along with it. Your politicians went along with it, hook, line, and sinker. People went along with it. They put stupid paper masks over their faces and acted like somebody was going to get them sick. Like all of a sudden we lost our God-given immune system and that you couldn't fight anything. Like we're all fragile, ill. And so it was just like this era of stupidity, this era of just being a total moron, and people fell for it. And they fell for the 6 feet apart thing. That was off of a 14-year-old's um, assigned project that didn't even have parameters and it was as if 10,000 people got ill because 10,000 people were that fragile. I mean, it was ridiculous that they invented social distancing and everybody bought it. So when it comes to all the harm and the death and everything that has happened since this guy came on the scene, just remember the group behind him making all of that work and doing all of that. He is supposed to be the fall guy. He always was. So it just drives me crazy because everybody thinks that the whole COVID-19 rests on him. But actually, it's the people that really designed this project that are hiding in the wings, not this guy. They always like the fall guy, right? For everything that's been done. So whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because, it's something. It's something. So I talked about military and the cell phones yesterday, right? I talked about how they don't want to let the military have cell phones because, they might record things that people don't want to, that they're not supposed to record, because I think a lot is happening on the stage of theater. Isn't it funny they call it the theater, the stage, basically? Theater of war. There's just so much going on that's so much fakery, like the Ukraine war had so much fakery surrounding it that I don't think they want people uploading and talking and doing all of those things. Just saying. I also wanted to make note of this as well before I get into my rabbit hole. And this one was this human robot that is supposed to attend, I think, high school in New York. And I think it's like upstate New York, if I'm not mistaken. And this introduction to this personage being accepted as a student, they're not doing a full student yet. They're doing it as like a tutor situation. But I was just flabbergasted that this would be something that people would actually buy into. So I just wanted to state the direction that we're going in is really, really scary. Okay. So I also wanted to bring this up on the screen, and this was a great meme. It says it's pretty insane watching these wildfires burn your country down, knowing you damn well know they literally can make it rain. There's so much truth to that. And you do kind of have to wonder why it is that they pretend that they can't do anything about these fires. And I do think the destruction of property is for monetary reasons, profiteering. There's so many things behind that, especially like in California, when it's primo land. There's reasons that they let places burn, and there's reasons they cause fires. And I do think fires are caused. And by the way, they're not caused by firecrackers. So fireworks. I can't believe people bought into that, but they bought into the fact that fireworks cause fires. That's actually usually hardly ever the case. And arson usually is behind it. And poor management by by libs that don't understand what they're doing because they're into this green thing, but they don't understand what management looks like, and how you can control those fires. So anyway, fires are going to happen, yes, naturally, but I do think a lot are by arson, and I do think a lot are manufactured fires. So for particular reasons, and getting people off of land, and then getting them somewhat paid to get off the land. There's fires in California that go back to PG&E. So, and yes, not caused by climate change either. That's funny. Yes, that was a comment coming in from YouTube. Yeah, it's not caused by climate change. Is not human caused. Let me repeat that. And it's never affected your life in any way. I don't care how old you are. It's never affected you. And it's cyclical. So there's nothing we can do about it, just like we can't do anything to change the time when the sun rises and sets. It's that much of a joke that we think that human caused paper straws and bags and all of that are causing some kind of climate change. And then the change always it goes to hot, goes to cold. And I've played through reels of through the decades how they tried to get that lie every 10 years to foment into something. So at the end of the decade, never the beginning, because that's too soon. It has to be the end of the decade so that you basically want to do something. So if it's far enough away but not too far, then you want to do something about it. I mean, it's really a joke. So, okay. And I've done so many shows about that. But let's push that aside for just a second. And I wanted to talk about this. This was, they are admitting that they are lowering your water quality for surveillance centers, but it's kind of interesting that water keeps coming up again and again and again. And I said yesterday, look, this is I think if there was ever a big diversion, let's just take the shots, okay? People now know not to probably run to the government for help and assistance and aid if they think something's going on. Why? Because your government doesn't care about you. Your government looks at you as a profiteering mechanism, and they also seek to take your liberty away. So they are never the answer. So the people that went, oh, the government loves me and they're telling me the truth and they want me to go get a bunch of shots. Okay. Or if you did it because you wanted to keep your job or whatever. Okay. Look, all I want to say about that is now people are kind of understanding that maybe you shouldn't trust their shots so much as a healthy person taking a shot from the government because they told you to be in fear. And so if they knew that you would understand not to take the shots, then what does that mean? That means that there is some sort of diversion going on. So I think there's more to what they end up doing in our water in the future to cause us to be pharma patients for the rest of our life. Because number one, it would be undetectable really to take a paper trail back to the government for that and back to the deep state for that. They can always claim, well, it was the water. Oh, it was in the water. Oh, it's always the water's problem, never somebody doing something or manufacturing something or manipulating something. So if we're to the point where we're not going to run for a shot, right? They can't get away with COVID again, okay? Because now people are seeing the effects, turbo cancer, illness, where it's only getting worse. If you had all of those immunizations, I love it when they call them that. I'm like, yeah, okay. If you had all of those shots, you'd be the healthiest person if they were real and they really were there to immunize you. You would be the healthiest person on the planet. And in a time of, and we're not, our health just keeps going downhill. And in a time when we don't have any plumbing problems at all, zero plumbing problems, a black plague virus could not take hold at all right now because we have decent and wonderful plumbing. So, and we've had this since the 50s. So there is no way organically or naturally that something like that could progress that quickly all around the world, by the way. Those variants got there pretty fast. In a month around the world. That's pretty quick. Oh my gosh, I can't believe people fell for variants too. But anyway, going back to this, you can't have a natural organic disease or just arise out of thin air, and then with our God-given immune system, even as strong as it is, and I can't believe it's as strong as it is when you look at the chemicals, the shots, and everything we take into our body, but that's by God's good design, then you can't have something like a black plague arise. And they were trying to tell you that COVID was a black plague. Okay. They were trying to tell you that you were going to get offed like that. Well, that what was doing the offing was people going into the hospital for COVID, and then they gave them remdesivir and a ventilator, and that's what was actually killing people. So it was the treatment. It wasn't the mystery disease. And so you couldn't have that with our plumbing today. So, and honestly, the vaccine should have never been manufactured either. The vaccines, I have to say that in air quotes, because we did have good plumbing and we did have all of those things. We had everything in our favor, and they pretended that we didn't. And they pretended we had to have that our immune system now existed in a little vial with a shot, with a needle. So that could never arise again. And I hope people are smart enough to realize that. And I think people are. I think people are finally getting like, maybe we should be a little tad bit suspicious and not run for a free donut to go get our shot. But doesn't that also tell you that there are other plans going on and that it is not about the shots? Because I think they put some very sinister things in those shots because of the people I interviewed that worked around those shots that said all kinds of crap, all kinds of disease are in those shots. So if they know that we are aware to a certain extent, a major part of the population, then something else is going on. And I do think it has to do with water. I really do. I think that is going to be the issue of the coming next 10 years is water and what they do to the water. And I know in my own county, we have these dip crap like county officials. They're the worst people I've met. And they're the most manipulative and horrifying people that I've met. And I've met a lot. I've met a lot of politicians and a lot of people in this business. But let me just tell you, they're some of the worst cads I've ever met. Liars. And the interesting part about that is that they spent $1 billion on a water system derived from our poop. So they can't wait for us to drink it. I'm in southern Utah, and so yummy. So you're going to see more and more of that. You're going to see more and more problems with water. And if I were you, I know that we're getting dumped on with chemicals. But honestly, if I were you, probably as a measure to like not solve it, but maybe have something, because you're probably like, what am I going to do? Well, number one, water witching your own well could be something that you could do. Okay. And another thing that you could do is there are plenty of machines that actually take the air and make it into water. So I would probably look at those two things as options, because I think that right now would be a good time to prepare for what's coming. I really do. Water is key. In one of it was written in 2010, and it was a project, and it was written up as the future of what would happen. And they were going to start cordoning off areas. This was the government writing this project. They were going to start cordoning off areas where you can't even walk up to this particular stream because 20 miles of it is completely blocked off because of the climate. So in favor of saving our earth, Mother Earth, I hate it when they do that. Mother Earth. In effort to do that, what they're going to do is they're going to use that as the bait. They're going to use that as the excuse as to cordon off full bodies of water and access to water. So I'm just saying this because anytime I get on the show, and I have for 16 years, I've always wanted to make sure that people walk away with some sort of answer. I can't solve everything, either can you, but some sort of something that says this is something that you could probably get right now that could be very regulated in the future. And you're going to want to know how to do it. You're going to want to know how to water witch, which is like taking two vines and walking, and the pull of the water draws those vines down. So you know where water is and you know where to dig. So I would watch the show Mully. It's on Netflix. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm talking about finding primary water. Go to primarywater.org. They talk about this a lot. Get yourself a machine that turns air into water to make sure that you have your own water daily. And then also the water witching to possibly do your own well. Okay. I know the legalities and all of that. I am just telling you some of the only answers. There we go. I don't know how else to put it. I had a wonderful water guy on the air. He was 90, I think 91 or 92, and he passed away last year. People have been asking me for his info. And he was talking about his almost perfect record of finding water. And in Utah, if you ever drive through Utah, you drive through a town called Beaver. And he actually founded their water system because he went up and founded a well. And honestly, it didn't take much for him to do it. He was so good at this. He was so good at this. And he offered my county to do this, right? He offered my county down here in southern Utah. He said, "I'll even do it for free because I'm living there. I will do it for free." And they said no to him. Why? Because they wanted to control the water, because they wanted to set the prices, because they wanted to raise the prices. And then they wanted to tell you it was liquid gold. And they wanted to pretend that it was not endless and renewable, which it is if you dig down like they have for centuries. It's just that we've been so brainwashed to think it only comes from rain pack and snowfall, or snowpack and rainfall. So very, very interesting. Wanted to kind of bring that up because I think there are things that we can do. I really do. I think there are things that we can do right now as a measure to think ahead a little bit. That's why I wrote the ebook on AI. That's why I said this is where AI is going, and no one's talking about it. It's a bait and switch. And you can get that at katetalks.myshopify.com, by the way. And why you need to know about your health, because you need to know how to deal with cancer, because 1 in 2 is getting cancer in their lifetime now. So your loved ones will get cancer, or you. So you have to know what to do. Also wrote an ebook on that after 16 years on the air. That ebook is available for you at katetalks.myshopify.com. It keeps getting censored for a reason. But you can hit YouTube and you can actually find out how to water witch, how to do these things to find water. And I would say really look at the past, really look into the 1800s. How did we do things? Because I think in the future, that important knowledge, nobody can take that from you. You're going to need that knowledge. And I'm not like a doom and gloomer. Like, I'm not like, we're going to die tomorrow, everything's going to be over in a year, because it's not. Honestly, it's not. It's going to take a while for all of this to pan out, for all of the things that we talk about. But the reason that I bring it up now is because I want people to exercise the options that they have now and not wait. Because the longer you wait, the more the options go away. They're regulated, they're scarce, you can't find them, can't buy them. And if AI moves in the direction I think it does, and at the end of that, your money is controlled, you would not be able to exercise options. And thank you. The cancer book is great. Thank you, LB. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm getting some comments on text too. I really appreciate that. Yeah, the cancer book was a labor of love because I just want to make sure people knew what to do and how to do it, and what was snake oil and what wasn't, because everyone is touched by cancer. All of us are. All of us are. So have that knowledge about what to do naturally. Don't fall for their, poison. So we've got to be able to do things naturally. So I bring that to your attention because I've just have been thinking about that a lot lately. And if they knew that we were going to become aware of their shots, then they have to be doing something else. They have to be doing something bigger than that. And I know that anytime, I'll say this once, okay? Anytime I've ever talked about water on the show, like in certain aspects of them spreading things in water with certain guests, I've been extremely censored. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there. It's so sad to me that we're supposed to be living in a country of freedom, and yet we scarcely see it because censorship is so real and so many people are hell-bent on censoring people that want to tell the truth. So, okay. All right. So I wanted to kind of bring you into a little bit of a rabbit hole because I did think that this was kind of, it's been bugging me, to tell you the truth. This rabbit hole's been bugging me for a long time. And the reason it has is because there's something there that's more sinister and bigger than I think we realize, but it's very hidden. And so I want to bring this up. You can join in this conversation. I have to bring this up because I think this is kind of interesting. So when you watch MGM, okay, and the old MGM, all right, and you see an old movie, and you see this pop up and it's in Latin and it has the trademark, okay? And around the lion's face is a Latin phrase. And what it means is art for art's sake, okay? So I don't know why this is, I've done tens of thousands of hours of research. This has always bothered me. There's something here that is just so weird. Your MGM, you are defining Hollywood. You are hiring spies to be in Hollywood because that's in World War II, it was a lot of spies. Okay. They were like Marlene Dietrich was a spy, admitted spy. I had a guest that said Marilyn Monroe was actually a spy because JFK actually was gay. So she was actually a spy, but they had to have a story where it was saucy and sexy and they had to get him in with having an affair with her. Okay. But I don't think that was it actually. So this was the defining age of Hollywood, where Hollywood was about to be on the main stage forever and ever and ever. Now think about this for a second. We're the only country that Hollywood, real Hollywood exists. No other country has this, okay? And this is truly run by Zionists who are really Satanists. And I do believe that. A lot of people hide behind being Jewish and they're not. They're actually Satanists. And I think the people that run these things are, okay? So you have any phrase you can choose, okay? You have any phrase you can choose, art for art's sake. And yes, part of that is saying that what they're about to do is art. The movies are going to be art, okay? And there's a lot of bohemian kind of phrases during this time, and so okay, that's. But why is it bothering me? Okay, why is it bugging me? So then I was thinking about the seeing a lot of information and doing a lot of research on the orphan trains. And the orphan trains were kind of interesting because there was definite paper trails of kids going into the kind of like work asylum orphanages. But there wasn't, for some reason, they nailed the paperwork on that, but they didn't nail the paperwork on where the kids were sent. And they even admit, even though it's a low estimate, that 20% were sent to really horrible places and horrible homes and used as slaves. I think it was way more than that. I think it's not 20%. I think it's 80%. And then the other 20%, they might have got sent to a decent home. But what were they used for? I don't know to the extent. But the orphan trains were a kind of an interesting story attached to all of this. Now, I'll come back to this MGM lion phrasing in just a moment because I want to talk about this guy. And I know when people see an old picture, they tune out, right? Because this isn't a 15-second reel and it's not like, I mean, they're like, oh, old guy. So she's talking about history. I'll tune out now. But this is kind of fascinating because this is Captain Thomas Cram, okay? He was the one that founded the Foundling Orphanage over in Europe. And this was in the 1700s. In 1704, at the age of 36, he went back to London. This guy was a sea guy, okay? He was a transporter. Keep that in mind. He was a transporter. And he started on ships at 11 years old, and he was a seaman. Okay, so he and his father, they were all into transportation on the sea. So he was born in Britain. He spent his formative years in the American colonies. And he made his fortune as a shipbuilder and a naval captain. Okay. And so, and this was long before, obviously the Declaration of Independence. It was long before the founding documents, but this was at a time when people were coming here, and he founded the first foundling hospital. So I want you to keep in mind that this guy could have just been over here in America, but for some reason, going back and forth from America to Europe, and also transportation was his thing. Okay. So transporting goods and people, because he actually did do some things where he had some lines that were transporting people that were unemployed. Okay. So he did have that set up. All right. So he helped obtain an act of parliament. So he was pretty powerful, giving a bounty on the importation of tar from the colonies, and he carried on business for some time. And then in 1712, he obtained a role in Trinity House, private corporation that combined public responsibilities with charitable purposes. Okay. Oddly enough, now here is a combined public responsibilities with charitable purposes. This is when it started to get intertwined. This is when people started saying we need money for the poor, but it needs to run through government instead of private. Now, it wasn't the prevailing thing, because up until obviously, the 1940s, we had a very, I would say it was very lopsided in the way, and good in the way, that people and churches were the ones that helped the poor and needy. It wasn't the government. But the government did try. And when the government was given, like, let's say in 1900, I found in one of my books, Don't Get Rid of Your Books, that they tried to give like $4 million at the time for the poor and needy in Ohio. And they realized that the money could have funded every single man, woman, and child, poor or not, and that it didn't fund the poor, and that the money was stolen. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. The money that was in the year 1900 in Ohio, and they figured out that the money was stolen, and they wrote about it in the newspaper at the time. Okay, so a lot of, like, let's say, money laundering when it comes to the poor. It's probably why I'm bringing this up. Lots of money laundering. So this guy, in 1735, brought forward a scheme of settling unemployed English artsy-fartsies, okay, artsy people in Nova Scotia. And the plan was approved by the Board of Trade, and then after being dropped for a time and carried out before his death. So he definitely knew how to move commodities such as people. Okay? This is the guy that did the Foundling Hospital, and the Foundling Hospital was very involved in the orphan trains. Okay. So he presented this idea to the women, the aristocrat women, to get their money. And he said, look, I want to start this Foundling Hospital. Really, it was a kind of more of an asylum that would send kids off to work for families, kind of like an indentured servant in many cases. But that wasn't widely known at the time. And, or if it was kind of buried. And so it was basically taking in kids, and then if they couldn't get rid of the kids, they, to families, or give kids away to families, then they were basically, I would say, in my opinion, mostly like, here's somebody to work for you as an indentured slave. Okay. So big money coming in for Karam. In fact, William Hogarth was an artist. Remember how I was talking about the MGM, art for art's sake? Kind of interesting. Well, Thomas Karam, this is when art became very, very popular. The sale of art was going to these foundling hospitals, right, as a mechanism to fund it. So they were utilizing art to fund orphans, is basically what they were doing, and promoting the art. And the aristocrats, the royalty, the rich people were saying, hey, this is art. Even though somebody might look at it and go, it's all right. I mean, you look at some of these paintings they call art, and you're like, what? my 2-year-old could have done that. So basically, it was declaring art for art's sakes, and then involving it with children, involving it with the sale. Okay. So he presented a picture called the March to Finchley, which was Moses with Pharaoh's daughter, and gave away 157 tickets of a lottery so that you could win this art piece, which, by the way, these royalties loved art, right? And because it became a staple like of your worth in society. If you owned art and were trading art and went to art shows and art museums and things like this, you were high class, okay? This guy, Thomas Karam, this Captain Thomas Karam, who started the Foundling Hospital tied to the orphan trains. Also, this is where Handel's Messiah became very popular. It was not until this time. But they threw a benefit foundation for the foundation and donated the manuscript of the Hallelujah Chorus to the hospital. So he composed an anthem specially for the performance at the hospital, now called the Foundling Hospital Anthem. And then with all of these artists that they gathered, remember, he was consistently sort of picking out unemployed artists, okay, transporting them different places, which was kind of weird, but whatever. And then they were highlighting all these pieces and then basically forming an art gallery. And the art always came back to the kids as funding the kids, which I did find weird, to tell you the truth. It was odd. Okay. So the Foundling Hospital, basically, and this goes back to Charles Dickens' character. So not only does it hit Handel's Messiah and also the fever behind art and what art is and how art is displayed and the value of art. Okay. And what I think sometimes my brain goes to would be maybe the laundering of money for trafficking. It's kind of where I'm going. But I want to bring you back to also Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens' character, Oliver Twist, was born in a workhouse where he grew up after his mother died in childbirth, and they gave him to a foundling hospital. And I was kind of, you think back in history to the stories that they call classics. We were talking yesterday about the Odyssey, the classics, what they tell us are classics. But it's so interesting because all of this is so interconnected. So you have these very popular books talking about the Foundling Hospital and the Foundling Hospital in London, showing tokens, playing cards, jewelry, pieces of cloth, medals, just records that show that very few mothers ever returned for their children, because when they would drop them off, they basically changed their name and told them that they were not allowed to come back and get them. So the records behind the children never stuck. So you couldn't find them. Don't you find that kind of strange? Wouldn't you do everything in your power if you were truly invested in children to get them back home or get them back with their parents when they got on their feet? Why in the world would you change their names? Why in the world would you do any of that, right? So we had all of a sudden, we didn't have this huge uptick of missing kids and kids that were like going and coming to these orphanages in droves and droves and droves. It was very weird that they said all these kids just started showing up, okay? That the parents would bring them, which was kind of strange. And I want to play a clip for you. This comes from the orphan trains, okay? And this is actually a video that I thought was kind of interesting. And I want to play for you the first little segment. This is 3 minutes long, but listen to this, okay? Because this is about the orphan trains, and the orphan trains would gather the kids at the foundling centers, the foundling hospitals. Here we go.
I wasn't looking for a conspiracy when I started this. I was tracing the administrative history of charitable institutions, the kind of dry archival work that fills footnotes nobody reads, public records, founding charters, parliamentary debates about poverty relief, standard historical background. Then I found the ledgers, intake columns running for pages, names, ages, dates of admission, and beside them, the outcome columns, thin, sparse, often blank. Children admitted by the thousands, children accounted for afterward by the dozens. I kept assuming I'd misread the records. I hadn't. The numbers didn't balance. They never balanced. Once you see that, you can't look at the institutions the same way again. The foundling hospitals weren't hidden. That's the first thing to understand. They were celebrated, announced in newspapers, funded by royal decree, named after their patrons, visited by dignitaries who wanted to be seen caring about the destitute children of Europe's expanding cities. Thomas Coram opened his hospital in London in 1739 and was painted by Hogarth. Catherine the Great established the Imperial Foundling Home in St. Petersburg in 1764 and wrote personally about its importance to the civilized project of the Russian state. The Paris institution dated to the 17th century and was referenced in every major survey of French social administration. These were not secret places. They were monuments, which makes what the records show considerably stranger. The intake numbers are not disputed. Coram's hospital admitted more than 16,000 children before 1800.
Do you see what I mean about the numbers going in? So they're with it enough to get the numbers coming in. Then why aren't they with it enough to get the numbers going out?
The home processed more than 37,000 in its first few decades. The Paris institution received more than 5,000 infants per year at certain points in the late 1700s. These figures come from the institution's own surviving documentation, not estimates, not projections. Actual ledger entries, catalogued, archived, partially digitized. The numbers are there. What isn't there, in proportionate quantity, are the outcome records, where the children went, what became of them. The intake columns fill pages. The outcome columns are thin, inconsistent, and in several cases simply stop. The official explanation is administrative. Record keeping in the 1700s was imperfect. Mortality rates were genuinely catastrophically high in institutional settings. Many children died before outcomes could be recorded. Others were discharged informally, apprenticed to local tradespeople, placed with rural families, and the paperwork didn't follow them. Historians of childhood and poverty cite these explanations, then move to the next section. The gaps are noted, they are not investigated. Acknowledge, categorize, move on. Never ask what the gap actually represents when the institution maintaining the records was a state-funded operation with professional administrative staff and a legal obligation to account for its population. But the mortality argument has a structural problem. The institutions kept death records carefully. Deaths required documentation for both ecclesiastical and administrative purposes. Burial registers survive in most cases. They account for a significant portion of intake. Added to the traceable outcomes, apprenticeships recoverable through guild records, marriage registers, military enrollment documents. They still don't reach the total number of children admitted.
Isn't that weird? Now that comes from a video that you can find called the Orphan Train Experience. I know, let's see. I'm just making sure. Oh, sorry. Here it is. It's called The Child System They Erased from History, the Foundling Hospitals. The Child System They Erased from History. You can actually find this. You can just Google that phrase. I'll give it one more time. It was done by Silent Century. The Child System They Erased from History, Foundling Hospitals. Okay. And it talks in depth about this very strange story about I'm sorry about that. So about how everything was hidden and all of a sudden you had all of these just children spring up from where, right? And I know that you could get into, at this point, you could get into like, the Cabbage Patch dolls, remember? And the Cabbage Patches, and you've seen those photos, I'm sure, online. There's a lot there. But, and I do think it gets into some pretty weird stuff. I think this was kind of the sort of beginning of the state messing with kids, the system messing with kids, and then, of course, money flowing into these hospitals, and then also never having like a track record of anything going on. So Thomas Coram. Yeah, this is Thomas Coram. So I'm seeing some notes on YouTube. So it's just, why would a guy whose life revolves around transporting things, commodities, all of a sudden just care about kids? And it could happen. Yes, it was just very strange. And he went back and forth from South Carolina to North Carolina to do business in Europe. He was just kind of an odd character. And when he decided to push art to raise money for kids, I think art became sort of an institution of, let me just put it, money laundering. I think it became an institution for money laundering. I think it's tied to drugs, art. I think it's tied to trafficking of children. Um, and you have to kind of wonder in your brain, why in the world would they take these kids in, change their names? You know, in Hollywood, they always change the name. It's kind of interesting. But going down some of these rabbit holes with this, and believe me, I've been looking into it, and I'll have to do like a part two. But um, this guy knew how to transport people and get it okayed as far as through regulation for whatever reason. And I just think there was a lot more to the starting of these foundling hospitals and to the orphan trains of the 1800s than people realize. I think that that kids were used for a lot of things, but I'm going to say labor was one of them. And if you go back into history and you realize how many things were just didn't make sense about any of this, and I mean any of this, like there was just so many weird, odd things about this whole story that never made sense to me. But when we're talking about huge sums of money, so the foundling hospitals on the British Isles were established during the 18th century, really. He did start in the 17th. So the earliest one was 1704, and then 1733 and 1739 was Carams. Carams was the biggest one. It was really getting the royalty to donate and to become part of the system. And then they would decide what happened to the kids. They would decide if they were going to become a laborer or if they just disappeared, I guess. So there was a heightened focus on the time of children's charities across Europe at the time. And child welfare became this sort of fashionable cause for the royalty. And like I said, whenever we get government, royalty, whatever you want to call it, involved with the care of children, don't we always see issues and problems? Don't we always find something wrong? Because I look at how the state, I look at how the feds, I look at how they handle child abuse and all of that, and you're going to find so much abuse in what's happening, right? So I never would have them care for children, but this was kind of interesting because this was the foundling of the foundling hospital in London, and this was by Thomas Caram, the country's earliest children's charity. So that's when the children's charity came along, okay? And became a sort of system entrenched charity. So all these members of society, the newly enriched merchants, the tradesmen, all of the philanthropy sort of went to this cause. And they utilize this cause also in our government, like I was talking about earlier, for the poor and needy. The churches and private people were always caring for our neighbors. We were always caring for people. But when the government took over, boy, did they turn it into something else, didn't they? So a lot of money went missing. And these children, like I said, were often pimped out for labor. So I don't know. There's something more here. I can feel it. Have you ever just gone down a rabbit hole where you go, this is so much bigger than people think it is? And the start of it. And I wanted to go through the start of it because this is something that you can help me with research, I think, in looking into this. I know a lot of you have been looking at the orphan train videos, all these missing children. Where did they come from? Where'd they go? There's so much there that we could get buried in. And without trying to get buried into that, I really didn't go into this with something sinister in mind in the very beginning. The only thing that threw me was that line for MGM, art for art's sakes, because it was so about that word art and the concept of art. And what I think of people that are kind of high and mighty in society, what do they always care about? Art. It's always about art. But I do think a lot of laundering has gone on with art. And I do think art is a little bit of a bait and switch. It's kind of like done on the premise of art, transporting expensive art and things like that. But I do think it's mixed in with trafficking. I really do, at the heart of it. I really do. There was a reason that they combined this at this Foundling Hospital in London. There was a reason they went in this direction. So, yeah, and the number of children certainly exploded. Let me say this, because I'm going to say the number of children that suddenly needed a home exploded at the same time that this came along. That the children's charities became the cause, right? The children's charities became the direction of money flowing from the aristocrats, from royalty, from government. Don't you find that a little too convenient? All of a sudden, parents just want to give up their kids. They just want to hand them over, and they know they're going to change their name and they can't see them again. And their records would be tossed, because that's what they would do. They just toss any record of the child. So, and they had to give up their guardianship, like their parental rights. Don't you find that a little strange that it all happened at the same time? Because if I go back to, say, the 1600s, parents weren't just giving their children up, right? They would go to neighbors, churches would step in, people would step in to help, but they weren't just giving people away. But it turned into this. So I think there's a lot more here than I think people want to discover, truthfully. But I think it's going to be people trying to take these pieces and go, what in the world? How has this happened? What's going on? And why the sudden influx of hundreds of thousands of children that suddenly didn't have a home? Where did they come from? What's going on? I know there's a bottom to this story, and it's always bothered me. Why is that? It's always bothered me. So I wanted to bring that. A lot of things bug me, but this one has always bugged me. Hollywood has always bothered me. There's something very strange about Hollywood. I've done some shows on it. I did a whole show on Disneyland and an ebook talking with the guy that worked in Hollywood for 20 years. And he had a whole different story about Hollywood and Disneyland, Hollywoodland, and its beginnings. And its beginnings were in the occult. Its beginnings were in the occult. So do I think something very sinister has happened and is going on now? Yes. Do I think this was the beginning of that setup? I do. I do. With everything that I've read about Karam, pieces of his life do not make sense to me at all. They don't seem very natural. His desire to do certain things did not seem natural. There was a lot of money flowing in, and I'm sure he profited well from that money as well. And then if you go into foundling centers and orphan trains, there's a whole lot that comes up as far as the number of kids that were being transported, but with no records. So where did they end up, and why were they on the trains, and why? Just a whole lot of whys in this story. But I wanted to go back to the very beginning, because I think that it's important to kind of start at what was the catalyst. How did all of that get rolling? And a lot had to do with the sale of art. The sale of art has been a prominent fixture. And it's been, what do your Hollywood elite collect? Art. Very interesting how it got popularized and how it obtained its value. Okay. So looking at a lot of pieces. I know this will sound a little crazy, but it is Hollywood. Yeah, you're right. It is Hollywood. I have these comments coming in. So I appreciate you kind of listening to this a little bit to kind of get those wheels turning, because I think it's important to go back to the beginning. And like I said, this guy, Thomas Karam, Captain Karam, made Handel's Messiah very popular. And what do? We look at it like, so we're always told what's a classic and what's not, what is good and what's not. We're always told these things. Well, anytime I'm told this is a classic, this is that, even the Odyssey, I'm going to question its whereabouts. I'm going to question its beginning. I'm going to question why it's on the table. Why is this featured as a classic? I always want to know the beginnings to things. I think if we had more curiosity and asked more questions, we'd be very much more awake. But I think that we should be questioning every time we're told something through history, we're told how to feel and how to act about it. I think that we should probably question that. That's just me. Because at the end, usually, like, okay, look at it this way. When I first came on this show today, I talked about the Civil War. We named it the Civil War way after the war because it was the war of aggression, the war of rebellion. But they didn't want to label that in history because they want us to be docile. They never want us to think that we could rebel. And so, they want us to be a good global citizen, and they push that in our faces all the time. Are you a law-abiding citizen? Even though the law isn't right, are you law-abiding? So that is pushed in our faces a lot, right? So for a reason, and we don't even question why we call it civil. Why do we call it the Civil War? It was a war between the states. You're right. You're right. So Peter Toole was in that movie, and how about the coincidence that he also starred in Lawrence of Arabia? Interesting comment. Thank you, Obi. So all I want to say is, do we question enough? No. Should we? Yes. And should we question why we use the terms? Yes. And they don't want you to know the First World War was supposed to be called the Great War because it was supposed to be the last war. It's just World War I. Why? And we named it that in history because World War II was coming. Very convenient. So after the fact, they changed history. They wanted it to be called the Civil War, so it seemed very docile. So it seemed like nobody was trying to make sure the states had the rights that they deserved, and that they were actually told they had. They wanted the feds to come in and rule. So it really was about that, and then about trade and profit. But people will always think it was about human rights and slavery. If you ask AI, it's about slavery, which was not true at all. It's always done under the illusion of human rights, but it is never talked about for the reasons it's actually done. War is always fought for trade lines, or like utilities, things like that, right? Pipelines, things like that. So it's for land, it's for money, it's for power. It is never for human rights. Human rights is only the smokescreen. Okay. And it was about states' rights. Yes, Mark, you're right. States' rights. It was about states' rights because this is where the Fed got their foothold. This is where the Fed said, no, we're going to be the most important brick in this stone house. So I just think that if we could go back into history, kind of look as a whole into how things began, why they began, ask more questions about how. I think we're going to find out a lot more truth than we realize. Do we want to find the truth? I sure hope we do. The central bank screwed us all. Yes, they did. That was definitely a plan in the works, and the Titanic is definitely squarely into that plan to get rid of those that weren't going to go along, and get rid of those rich that weren't going to go along. So that even the Titanic was the setup for ridding us of the people that were going to say no to central banking. So yes, I'm with you. Believe me, all of this studying, all of this research. See, talk show hosts, they're not supposed to study. I'm being completely serious. Talk show hosts are meant to not study. They're only meant to get info from producers that study. And that's one of the key problems in America is that, and believe me, I've been in the media. Okay. And I've seen a lot, and I will tell you that you are supposed to remain dumb. You are not. If you educate yourself at all, then you're more of a threat. So they remove you. That's just how it works in society right now. If you're a talk show host, you are either bought and going along with the narrative because there's something in it for you and profit, or you're just so silly that you just think whatever the producers hand you is truth and you never question anything. So there's that. And they're all bought. You realize that most all of them are bought, even your favorites. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. Be faithful, be fearless. I'll be back on Tuesday with Dr. Lee Merritt. The news is bought by the CIA. Yes, it is. I'm getting this comment from Mark. It is, and it's controlled through the Pentagon, and yes, it has been for a very, very, very long time. the news media. The AP started in the mid 1800s and also controlled our elections. So there's a lot about media and journalism that people do not know, but they call the elections anyway. I also wanted to tell you, go get Cardio Miracle because it actually works. As I'm not going to tell you to get something that doesn't. Cardiomiracle.com/Kate has most of the stuff that you're taking, like in I know you probably got a million bottles lined up because as you get older, you get more bottles on your counter. How do I know this? And you can reduce those by taking Cardio Miracle. And it will save you a lot of money. So please go get Cardio Miracle because I really love this product. I've been taking this for almost a year, and I am telling you, it makes a huge difference than any product I've ever promoted. So please go get that. And then also go get the ebooks. The cancer ebook is very important. Please go order it. Also helps the show. And then it's at katetalks.myshopify.com. Go get the AI one, because what I said about AI and where it's what's geared to happen by 2029 with AI is not what you think. And no talk show host will talk about it because they're bought. So they just will not talk about it. And I don't know if they even know about it. So please go and get that ebook, the AI ebook. And I really appreciate that today. Because those ebooks are very, very important. I did the one on organ donation as well, with the truth about organ donation. And that is extremely important. So please go get that one because people need to understand what they're doing with their life. And if they are in a tragic accident, what happens and what the hospital will actually do behind their back. So please go get organ donation, the organ donation book. And I really appreciate that. Mark also says you vote right or left for an illusion of freedom. That's true. The right and the left both suck. They are both horrifying and both parties are bought. Yep, I'm with you. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in for sure today. And I'll be back on Tuesday with Dr. Merritt. She has a new book out, and you're going to want to know what this book is about. You're going to want to know all about it, actually. Be faithful, be fearless. Please go to katetalks.myshopify.com to support the show. When I do need supplements like copper, we all should be doing copper. Please. It is the main mineral that controls the other minerals, and we're all depleted since the 1930s and 40s when they took it out of our food supply. Copper I get at Formula IQ. Okay. And you just put in the code Kate, but I love that product too. So it also gives you great skin, hair, and nails. So just saying. All right, you guys, thank you so much. And go to the website, katedalleyradio.com. If you have any questions about anything I talked about, all of the info is there. And if you're wondering about supplements, you can actually ask formulaiq.com. I really trust these guys. Are really good, and they have good products, actual ingredients that actually go in. So I love that. But I really, really do appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you for your support. It means a lot to me. And I will see you on Tuesday. So I really do hope you have a great weekend. Go get some sun. Sun turns out lowers your cholesterol when you're getting some sun. And stop wearing sunscreen. It causes cancer as well. Okay? I don't ever put on sunscreen, and I'm pretty fair. I don't put it on. All right, you guys. I'm out. See you guys. KateDalleyRadio.com.